So in this segment, we're going to be discussing the Diane Abbott situation, and this is you're not going to want to hear this. You know, this gives me big Johnson vibes. What the way Starmer has handled this. So this from Victoria Derbyshire saying, "No, I can reveal Labour's investigation to suspended MP Diane Abbott's racism comments finished 5 months ago. A source says she was given a formal warning in December 2023. Miss Abbott was required to do an online anti-Semitism course, which she did in February. Yet a source says she still hasn't been told if she can stand as a Labour candidate at the election. I understand veteran MP is angry, depressed, and worn out by the way she feels the way she's been treated by the Labour Party." Now, the Labour MP has been saying for months is subject to a disciplinary process, and they've been saying this well after that formal warning in December, and even after that warning in February. You know, when asked about it, it's up to a disciplinary process. You know, it's an independent process. Even though Diane Abbott herself said it's up to Starmer. He's the one that, you know, can withdraw or restore the whip. But we were told consistently by Labour MPs that that was not the case, and that's why I mean this is an ongoing scandal in the Labour Party. We'll cut to, you know, Owen Jones on this one. Starmer has repeatedly told the public that the investigation into Diane Abbott was ongoing, and so that he can't get involved. He kept saying it was an independent investigation. That turns out to be yet another lie. Meanwhile, his allies have been protected for behaviour ranging from racism to harassment. And this is from a potential voter who's talking about this, who called in to Lewis Goodall.
It's unjust what's happened to Diane Abbott, and as a woman of colour, I feel that Keir Starmer has forgotten that he needs the black vote, whether he likes it or not. And I believe that Diana Abbott has been hanged out to dry. I believe that it's just unjust. And
this is indicative of how Labour have treated certain minorities. Because when it comes to Muslim voters, they've done similar things. You know, when asked about why, you know, were they concerned about Muslim voters leaving the party, one insider source said the party is shaking off the fleas. We don't even know who that person was. Were they disciplined? How are they punished? We don't know. And we saw that with Starmer as well when he went to a mosque in Wales and said, "I reiterate my call for Hamas to release the hostages." And you're like, bro, you went to a mosque whilst eating samosas and having dates. Or did you tell the imam, like, can you call your boys in Hamas and get them to release the hostages? What were you thinking? And this is indicative of how the Labour Party treats certain minorities, especially given that these are core voters that they need as well.
I'm actually considering my vote, whether to vote for Labour or to stay at home.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that, so this actually could, you've always voted Labour, have you?
Yeah, yes,
and yet, so this could actually be something because you just don't like the way Starmer's handled the issue.
Also, I think, yeah, and disillusioned black voters who would literally abandon Labour. We won't switch to Tories, but I think we'll stay at home and it'll be a protest vote. We need a Prime Minister who challenges inequality at the root, particularly around criminal justice, employment, health, housing. And I've always heard Keir Starmer hark on about his proud record of being somebody that was head of, you know, the justice system. Well, if that's the case, you can see how Diana Abbott's been treated is appalling. She was vilified by a conservative Tory donor, you know, and as a woman of colour, hearing that, you know, if women look like Diana Abbott, he hates them. So what does that say for young black women who want to participate in the democracy process? You know, it makes them feel like they don't have a voice.
And this is, you know, there was a story a couple of months ago from Channel 4 where black female MPs were reluctant to speak out for fear of backlash from the party leadership. You know, the kind of the party machine. And you're like, what the hell is going on in the party? We've had the Ford report that was suppressed for ages. And Martin Ford, I think, came out and said, like, his recommendations weren't implemented. What the hell is going on in the Labour Party, honestly?
And I believe if he doesn't reinstate Diana Abbott, who did apologise immediately, I believe that he will lose a lot of votes from the black community.
You think so? You think that this issue is costing the Labour Party support from black voters?
Yeah. Well, if you look at the Ford report, you know, all the other reports that have been commissioned, I'm a black woman. My daughter wants to vote. She's 20 and she feels disillusioned. So I think that, you know, we need to look at Labour.
That's potentially a lifetime voter there. Someone who's 20 years old. That's potentially Labour losing a lifetime member, a lifetime voter over this, because the clowns at the head of the party, instead of making a decision on this and, you know, doing the right thing, which in my opinion was restoring the whip after, you know, the relevant courses and stuff were done. They decided they didn't want to do that because they don't want her to run in the next general election. I guarantee they want one of their cronies like Paul Mason or someone like that in that seat.
If it was a Jewish woman that made this comment, or somebody made a comment to a Jewish person or Muslim, I feel there'll be uproar. But because it's Diane Abbott, and I've seen how she's been the butt of jokes, I've seen how she's been, vilified in the media. I just don't like the way she's been treated. And somebody who's iconic as that, the first black woman MP, I think she should have been treated much better. And I think that Keir Starmer hasn't given her no grace, hasn't been, vocal in his support of Diane Abbott. But yet you can let Natalie Elphicke be warmly embraced into the party, and that's another dog whistle for me.
And that's the thing. Like, a lot of people pointed out, like, how can this be a party for Natalie Elphicke but not a party for Diane Abbott? This from LBC and Andrew Fisher.
I think is right from Victoria Derbyshire that this concluded some time ago. Then surely Labour Party has some questions to answer about what they've been telling everybody.
Yeah, I think straight up they've been lying to you and to other journalists as well. And this has been known for a time. Look, Labour Party has this pretense that it has an independent process now. It doesn't. The decision to open an inquiry is entirely politicised. It's not run by anybody independent. It's run by the same people it's always been run by in Labour HQ. You then have a report done. It's investigated, again, by officers of the party. There's then some independent oversight. And then when it comes to MPs, that report comes back, and then the whip makes a decision about whether they get the whip back at the end of it, regardless of what the report says. And let's not forget, the same thing happened to Jeremy Corbyn back in 2020, 2021, when after the EHRC report came out, and you mentioned his response to that, he did offer a clarification and clarified what he'd said, because he didn't express himself perfectly. He was then cleared by the independent NEC panel and reinstated as a member, and then Keir Starmer and his henchmen withheld the whip. Same thing seems to have occurred to Diane Abbott here. And
because it's a political decision. That's what it is. It's a party political decision of who has the whip taken from them and who doesn't, who has investigations done into them and who doesn't. And we'll talk about that in a moment towards the end of the video, and I'll give a specific example. And going back to this, going back to the Diane Abbott situation, this would mean that every Labour MP who went on television and said that there was an ongoing independent investigation into Diane Abbott either was lying or was deliberately misled by the party. And I want to ask you, the audience, which one do you think it was? Do you think they were misled by the party, which is a Boris Johnson move? Let's be honest now, it's a Boris Johnson move to ride out scandals, to say, oh, it's down to an investigation, oh, blah, 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 we can't speak now. This is literally what Boris Johnson did. Maybe Starmer learned from one of the best to ever do it when it comes to handling scandals. Or they were in on it. The Labour MPs were in on it and they misled people. They were all in on it together. Diane Abbott has been given the whip back, but Keir Starmer wanted to reinstate the Labour whip to Abbott so she could leave Parliament with, quote, dignity as a Labour MP, not an independent. She is still banned from standing as a Labour candidate because, again, these are political decisions. And one of the key problems is that Starmer himself said the decision's meant to be democratic. The selection for Labour candidates needs to be more democratic. We should end NEC impositions of candidates. Local party members should select their candidates for every election. So why is it that Diane Abbott's been blocked? Why? It doesn't make sense. That's the other thing. That's the thing that I spoke about. This from the BBC saying, I understand Diane Abbott was given the Labour whip back today. She has been suspended as a Labour MP over comments she had made. The suspension made her ineligible to stand as a Labour candidate. Party officials had tried to broker a deal by which she would not run again in return of having the whip back. So this is something that I think Andrew Fisher and Owen Jones potentially reported a good couple of months ago, that Labour had offered some sort of deal to her to say that we'll give you the whip back, but you can't run again. Now, what kind of treachery is that? Either she did something wrong and she's right to have the whip withdrawn from her and she shouldn't be allowed in the party, or she's been forgiven, or she's done the relevant punishment so she can come back into the party. There's no in between here. There's no in between here. You can't make grubby deals with people like this. This is insanity. Him going on to say, the journalist, it's not clear if she accepted the arrangement. For now, she's once again a Labour MP, but it's clear that Starmer is going to block her. It's going to go a little bit more from LBC.
Diane Abbott will not be allowed to stand as a Labour candidate in the forthcoming general election. That would end her 37-year career in Parliament as...
If he wanted to go out with dignity, it would be on her terms, not his.
The Hackney North and Stoke Newington MP, and she was the first black woman elected to Parliament as well. However, a Labour source has just been in touch to say they are still awaiting and a decision from Labour's National Executive Committee. They insist that nothing has changed since Keir Starmer was asked about this earlier today by broadcasters. But look,
and it shows you how fast things can change. The fact that Victoria Derbyshire can put this story out. Essentially 7:39 a.m. May the 28th, right? She can put this story out, and then within less than a day, stories are coming out about Diane Abbott having the whip restored. And this isn't because the independent investigation's over. That's all nonsense. That's a red herring. The reason why these stories are coming out is because of the fact that Victoria Derbyshire's team or herself have outed the fact that Starmer that this investigation concluded months ago, and it was Starmer's been the reason why she's not been allowed back into the party. That's why this has happened. This is the important bit that people need to understand. This has all been a political decision. The only reason she's being allowed back into the party, if she's allowed back in, because this is, I'm playing a dangerous game here by recording this beforehand. The only reason she's going to be allowed back in is because of the fact that Starmer's been outed on this. Very similar to what happened with Johnson and with some of the investigations he had to carry out because he's been outed as a liar. That, when he said, I didn't know that happened, when he knew that happened, Starmer kept saying for ages now that there's an independent investigation. There wasn't. It was done ages ago. And so, again, it's up to the Labour, the machine at the Labour Party to decide who is worth investigating. Because, if we go to an actual example here, Steve Reid, right? He's a Labour insider. He's like one of the shadow ministers. Steve Reid has apologised unreservedly for the language he used in a tweet suggesting that Tory donor Richard Desmond was the puppet master to the entire Tory cabinet. The shadow communities and local general secretary posted on social media this afternoon to apologise for his comment, which referred to an ongoing cash for favour scandal. So the person he was referring to was Jewish. And so, there's obviously slurs there when you call people puppet masters, etc. And so what was the action taken? He deleted his tweet. And he didn't mean to cause any offence. It's understood that no further action will be taken by the Labour leadership against the local government spokesperson following his deleting of the tweet and the apology. So why is it Diane Abbott wasn't given the same grace? Why is it that Steve Reid wasn't put on an anti-Semitism course? Why? Because this is direct anti-Semitism here, what he said here. Accusing a Jewish person of being a puppet master, whether he knew that person was or wasn't. This is one of the reasons why you should be careful with the language you use. Why wasn't he put on an anti-Semitism course? Do you see the hypocrisy what I'm talking about here, people? Honestly. And, this should be a good day for Labour. Rayner, no police action after the council house probe. So Rayner's been, basically the police have, withdrawn their investigation into Rayner. Labour are in the clear here. But when you look at the BBC headlines page, what's the headline? Is it Angela Rayner's thing? Where's Angela Rayner's story? It was here somewhere. It's gone, by the looks of things. But when you look at, what's the big story here? It's Diane Abbott. And so this is Labour going to be asked another round of questions now about what the hell happened with Diane Abbott. And I hope the journalists draw a parallel between what the way Starmer has treated Diane Abbott and the many scandals of Boris Johnson in the way Johnson handled scandals, which is to drag, delay, bore out, talk about independent investigations for as long as possible. I really hope they do this, because the way she's been treated is horrible. Regardless of how you feel about Diane Abbott, no one should be put in a situation where you get a formal warning, an independent investigation was done, it was concluded, and they still didn't give her the whip back. Why? Because they don't want her in the party. That's why. They don't want her in the party, and I guarantee there will be people who won't turn out for Labour this time round because of the way she's been treated. So once again, Labour are going to lose core voters here because of their own stupidity, because they don't know how to treat minority voters. That's why. There is something toxic in the Labour Party, in this iteration of the Labour Party. I'll be honest. When I read that comment about shaking off the fleas, that shook me. That really shook me. It made me really, really not like some of the people in the Labour Party. And the fact that person was never outed, that annoys me to no end. But, no doubt some of the people won't cover this story, or they'll spin the story or whatever. This has been a real shocker. Not a fumble, a shocker from Keir Starmer, which had never been allowed to happen. And, when people keep saying we need to give this man the biggest majority we can or whatever, that's who this man is. And so I'm incredibly nervous if stuff like this happens. The way she's been treated is horrible, and it's indicative of a pattern, I think, of how Starmer's going to deal with stuff, how he's going to gaslight people. Because we've seen that he'd do that over the pledges. We've seen him do that over the pledges and stuff like that. I didn't U-turn on the pledges or get rid of the pledges. I changed some of them. He's being pedantic. This is endlessly frustrating. This whole situation here never had to happen. But this is one the Labour Party brought on themselves. But anyways, I'll leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.